Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Dylan, filling in for Donna today, as she's up in Auckland for the Industry Awards. Today we're going to be looking at the Kitomba reports that you should be using. Okay, so if you are able to raise your hand, if you are sort of in attendance, and obviously just to make sure that it's all working for you, I believe that the raise hand button is sort of on the top right hand side of your screen. I'll just keep an eye out and just make sure that everyone's around. Perfect, we should be good to go on from there. So if you have any questions, you can either enter your questions on that question pane on the control panel on your screen. Otherwise, obviously you can feel free to send us an email after the webinar, or of course call the help desk. Just a reminder that we do record this session, and afterwards we'll send it out as a link to the webinar sort of later on today. So reports are the roadmap to your business, and they can provide you with information on what's working well and potentially what's working not so well. That provide you with the data that you need to manage your business. The Reports tab provides us with the ability to run a variety of reports. In Kitomba, there is a big selection of reports to help you manage your business, and today we're going to go over when to run a report and which reports you should run. Now that does depend on your business to a certain degree, but today we're at least going to look at what we would recommend. So there are reports specific to the tasks that you complete in a day, a week, or other times like maybe a stock take. So we're going to go through all of those sort of category by category. Hopefully that makes it a little bit easier. So in the session we've divided them up, and in the beginning of the day we recommend running a couple of reports. So these would be the customer history by staff and the customer history one-page report. So to generate these reports, we would recommend that you go into the Reports tab of Kitomba, select the reports you want to run, and then once you've selected the report, you have a few options for maybe filtering it out. So, for example, you can run it for a particular staff member, run it for a certain date. Generally, you run it on the day that you're about to be beginning, but you could obviously run it for a future or a past date if you really wanted to. So what you select will depend on what you see a need for on your business. I generally recommend having a play around. If you're really heavy on notes and you really want to drill and look into what your clients were having in the past, you could obviously look at getting more information. But if it's not so relevant and you're mostly curious about what your customer's having today and maybe what they had last, you can possibly use a smaller number. So only show a couple of notes, which might even save you some paper. With these reports, you have the option of running them or saving them as a PDF, which can be useful if you maybe want to send it out to your staff or put it on a different device other than the main Kitomba computer. One thing that's really interesting to note is that the customer history one page, in order to generate it and actually have it sort of display as a nice graphic report, it will generally open up in, say, your web browser as like an HTML file. So that makes it really good for printing and quite nice if you ever wanted to, say, copy it and open it across on a different device rather than your main Kitomba computer. Here's a sort of closer look at what the reports look like once we actually run them. So the customer history by staff report, what this will do is it will give you each staff member on their own page, and it will break it down, the appointments that they have throughout the day, what time, who the appointment's with. Now this can be really useful if you sort of want to give it to a staff member. They can walk away with it and obviously not need to keep checking in on the computer who they have booked in at what time. So this can be really useful. Another way of getting this information, if you have access to Kitomba One, you could look at the Clients tab in Kitomba One, and that will generally give you your clients for the day, and you can view that for individual staff members or the whole business. And the advantage there is if you're keen to go paperless, maybe avoid printing paper, or if you have your staff and they're already on, say, mobile devices like an iPad or a tablet, they can get similar information and even update notes from there. Now, the customer history one page, this one here, is a more graphical sort of report. So it's the same information as the above, but obviously it gives it to you in the calendar format. So you can actually look at your day sort of similar to how it would appear in Kitomba, but also with the customer name, some information like you can see the stars that they have there. You can see what their previous appointments were. If there were any notes, so you can see, say, notes or treatment notes, those would appear as well. And this is obviously very useful if you're doing more technical appointments and you want to know precisely what the client had last time. As I say, this report generally will open up in a web browser or whatever you use to manage HTML, but it can be printed and it should look really good from there. So another thing that people might do at the start of the day is run the message list report. So obviously we'd be quite familiar by this at this stage with the messages tab, which is great to see your clients who have automatically confirmed their appointments via text or email. But if you've had clients that need to be called, which isn't so common these days, but it does happen, you can run the message list report. And this will tell you all of your messages, obviously the content of the message, who it was meant to go to, and what time it was meant to go out. So hypothetically, you could run this report for a message type like call me, and that would give you all of your customers who maybe don't have texts or emails going out automatically, but you might want to generate a list so that you know to follow up from there. Obviously, this has an option for date picking, so you don't necessarily have to do it for appointments for today, but it might be part of sort of your admin work or your start of day to contact customers who have upcoming appointments so you can follow up with them from there. Now, at the end of the day, this is something that would hopefully be quite familiar with. We want to reconcile our payments that we've taken in real life with our payments that we've had or told Kitomba that we've made. So this would be done by running the cash draw reconciliation report. You can also access it by hitting, say, the file end of day on the top left hand corner of Kitomba. And what this does is it gives us a quick check sheet for us to complete. So obviously on the left it has what we would, or what Kitomba currently expects our takings to be. This would be based on your payments, based on your invoices, based on your petty cash, anything that involves either taking payment from a customer or returning, say, cash or as in the form of a refund to a customer. The reconciliation is just important because at the end of the day or end of the week or month, we want to make sure that what we've told Kitomba we've sold matches up with what we've actually sold, so that our reporting has a lot more credibility. If it's ever sort of incorrect, which we generally hope doesn't happen, but if you ever find that it doesn't match up with what happens in real life, what we'd recommend is running the cash draw transaction summary report. And what this report does is it gives you every single sort of source document, so that could be an invoice, a payment, a credit note, anything that would affect your cash draw for the day, and it will display them here by payment type, by amount received, and then even the source document total. So these don't always have to match. You could say I have an invoice of $100 where 50 was on FPOS and 50 was on cash, but it is a useful tool for troubleshooting. Generally, if I was, say, out on cash at the end of the day, I would filter this report by the cash payment type on the left there, and then I would just go through and match each individual transaction with what I've taken or what I know I have in my till. And that can hopefully find where the outlier or the potential sort of mishap occurred, and we can hopefully go back and either amend the invoice in Kitomba or follow up with maybe a staff member or a customer, whatever happened in real life, and make sure that everything lines up from there. If we get a call about the totals not matching up, as well as using the transaction summary, we also recommend that you maybe check that your vouchers and your Visa, MasterCard type payments are all counted separately and assigned to the correct payment type, so that the troubleshooting can be made a little bit easier. Obviously, we can look back and know exactly where it's missing and obviously count it all out from there. Now, if you want the complete picture of our reconciliations and our transaction summaries, the cash draw takings report, which would also be in the reports tab under our sort of sales and payments on the top right, this is the one that takes into account any voucher sales and non-sort of bank payments that or non-cash, should I say, so that you know exactly where you stand. This should give us a breakdown of everything going in and coming out. The cash draw would reconcile our sort of payments against our sales as well. So this one's quite useful because it would tell you if you'd had invoices or payments within your date range that don't necessarily line up with the date range that we're running. So a good example of this could be if you've had a customer either prepay for an invoice, so they've credited their account, say, a week ago, a month ago, but they are only being invoiced today. So the payment would be on last week's cash draw takings report, but the sale would be on this week's reporting. So it would definitely let you know what those sales are relating to. So you'd obviously be able to look back and obviously verify that it's all kosher, or it's all hopefully what we'd expect. Same deal, it would tell you the opposite. So maybe you've received a payment but haven't made a sale in the date range. So for example, I've taken a $100 deposit from a customer, but their appointment's not till next week. We'd be able to see that as well as our vouchers and our petty cash. So it gives us a nice breakdown, and it also gives us say our cash position here. And our cash position would include our payments from, say, FPOS or obviously cash that we would intend to maybe take to the bank. So we'd be able to say, look at our bank transactions for the date range, and it would hopefully match up with Kitomba in terms of deposits and things like that. Non-bank would be stuff like, say, vouchers or payment types that you purposefully want to exclude. Say you've got something like a donation going on there, and obviously you'd still want to reconcile that because you want to make sure that you're accounting for everything that's coming through the system, but it's not necessarily money that you're going to take to the bank and have them load into your account. So a voucher, as an example there, you would have the payment when the voucher was initially purchased. That would go into, say, your FPOS or your cash, and then when the voucher is redeemed, it would show up as like a non-bank payment. So you're still reconciling it, but you're not double dipping and, say, accounting for it twice and expecting to have it appear in your bank account multiple times. Now, outside of looking at the payments, if you are interested in your actual sales for the day, so these would generally be your invoices, we would look at running the sales daily sheets report. So this report will give you a bunch of details on all sales made by, say, staff people through the defined period. So this is very useful if you want to see what your team are selling, who is selling the most, and it's also quite useful for troubleshooting. If you really want to find out why your, say, business summary or transaction summary is at a certain number, but you're not really sure what was purchased, who was selling what, this report would be the best one to give it to you. It gives you all your invoices and then the individual items on the invoice and who that all gets credited to. It's quite useful as well because you can refine it by a sales type. So right now, say the report is being run for all sales types, so it's going to be your retail, your services, your vouchers, and even your concessions. But you might be in a situation where you only care about retail, potentially for like you're running some commissions or say special promotion with your staff and customers, and you really want to drill down, you can certainly filter the report by retail sales type, or you could filter it by concessions if you were keen to just find out your concession sales and redemptions, which can be a very useful sort of troubleshooting tool or method of reconciling what your numbers are on your business summary report versus obviously what your individual invoices were for the day. So there are lots of reports that can really help you in terms of the end of week, but the one that we really like is the Star Clients report. So if you've got Star Clients set up in your preferences, you'll be able to run the Star Client report, which will quickly show you how many of your clients, how many clients your staff have under each star category. You can also see the breakdown of types of stars within each staff member's client base. This is a great tool for understanding how your staff are progressing and where they may need extra support. It gives you a clear indication of what is happening on the customer journey. So this report gives you a summary of your client's star ratings. If credit services 2 is set to designated salesperson, Kitomba will assign the client and their star rating to the designated salesperson on the invoice. If it's instead set to, say, who did work, it would be counted under every staff person who dealt with the client. So star clients, as we mentioned before, is turned on or activated in the preferences section of the admin tab. Definitely let us know or let me know if you need a hand getting that set up. A number of businesses currently use star clients to help with team training. So running the star clients report lets you quickly see which team members have the most full star clients and highlights the team members that may need to upskill or build confidence in certain areas. So for example, they may need to upskill themselves in product knowledge if they need to maybe make more retail sales, or potentially even techniques to improve their rebooking rates if you just want to make sure that they're asking the right questions or guiding clients to making their next appointment at the end of their initial appointment. Okay, so I can see that we've got a question that's just come through around where the star ratings come from. Effectively, what you do is you set up certain categories to be associated with certain star types. So, for example, we could have a star type for your treatments, a star type for maintenance, anything like that that you want to sort of put into a category. When your clients have appointments that meet that category within whatever date range you're interested in, so potentially in the last 3 months, potentially in the last 6 months, it will count towards that star. So some of it, as we say, would be from particular categories, so say a color or a chemical service or a treatment. Other stars come from, say, purchasing retail or sort of your standard core services. So the ideal, or like a 5-star client, would be someone who, say, comes in and they rebook their appointments, they purchased your core services, they purchase retail, they're getting, say, a color or a chemical, and then they're also getting a treatment. So it's just a client who are getting all different types of your treatments, so they're sort of utilizing the full staff and business repertoire there, and also you're rebooking them and upselling them retail. So basically maximizing your potential value out of a client. So it's useful, obviously, as we say, to make sure that your staff are across it and they know where there's potential for upselling and maybe getting staff all on board with bringing up your client base or getting the most out of your clients, should we say. I hope that answers the question, but if you do have any more queries, definitely let me know. Awesome. Okay, so this is a report that we hopefully won't need to run as often, but there are a whole set of reports that will help us keep a hold of our stock levels, and we can monitor them for, say, unusual variations. So if we were to, say, run and print this stock take report, what that would do is it would allow us to look through what our current expected amounts of stock are in Kitomba, and then obviously spot check that against what we have in real life and put it in the actual. So this is really important, obviously, to do at a frequent or interval, so whatever suits you, just to make sure that you're able to do good accounting, you're able to keep track of what you have. If there are any anomalies, so things are going missing, you can hopefully tidy up processes around that. Or if obviously you've got too much stock, then potentially you know that you've made sales or used stock that hasn't been accounted for. So it's really helpful just to reduce waste and will have a really good or positive impact on your cash flow, just in terms of not ordering things you don't need to, and of course ordering things that you do need to. So you'll see on the left we've got a couple of reports highlighted, so I'll just run through them very quickly and let you know what the use cases are for them. So the stock auto order report is a report that prints separate purchase orders, which would be, say, suitable for faxing or emailing for each of your suppliers, and this would be for reordering stock, and this would be based on maybe what you've set up in the cards tab of Kitomba under your products and your category. So either your minimum levels, your maximum levels, or potentially say based on the amount of stock you've used over a certain date range. So this is the same as generating an order in the cards tab under working with suppliers, but it will just give you the sort of graphical and the printout that you can then send to the supplier. It's not necessarily going to be interactive like in the cards tab. The stock ordering report, this will give us a list of our products which are currently below the minimum and need to be ordered to maintain our target stock levels. Deactivated products or stock with a minimum level of 0 are continued to be discontinued and would not be shown on this report. Next one down, we've got stock movement summary. This one provides us with a summary of our stock movements over a date range. So this would be, say, our adjustments, our internal use, our receipts, and our returns. All that sort of stuff will be recorded. So this is really useful, especially if you're keen to find out how much you're spending with a particular supplier. You can just run this report and it will give you all that information. The one above it, which I glossed over before, stock item trace, is a really, really useful tool for troubleshooting your stock. So often if you say looking at the expected level in Kitomba or looking at your stock value or stock take, and if you have a number that doesn't quite gel with what you have in real life, it can be a little bit confusing. So the first thing I would always recommend is that you run the stock item trace report for the particular product that you're interested in. And what that should do is give you all of the transactions, so the invoices, internal use, supplier orders, adjustments, anything that's affecting the stock level, and it will list it out for you chronologically. So from there, you can generally work through and find out when you maybe sold it and weren't expecting to have sold it, or when it was manually adjusted, and that helps you get a better idea of why Kitomba thinks that the stock level is what it is. And I find in sort of 99% of cases that will resolve the issues, but it's a really good tool for troubleshooting and a really good tool for drilling down to a particular product and why it is at its current level. The stock statistics report is your go-to report if you're interested in listing your product items that have been sold over a date range. So this is the report similar to, say, your service statistics, where you just want to find out what your individual items sold over a date range are. It's quite customizable. By default, it will give you a very broad summary view where it will just give you each, say, category or supplier and the numbers and the amount sold from there. But you definitely have the ability to change it to be more granular and show you all products, say in a category or supplier. So this is good if you just want to have a very in-depth list of exactly what your business has sold over a date range. So the stock take report, moving down on this list here, is a report that provides you with a list of your expected product levels for stock taking purposes. I've sort of touched on that before. So your products can be selected by category, and generally your deactivated products are not displayed, but you are able to display deactivated products as well if you are interested. The stock turnover report is a really interesting one. This is a report that measures how quickly your stock is converted into sales. So you would use this report when you're to see what stock levels are working really well, so what you're selling, what moves through your system really quickly, and it will also tell you what stock doesn't move that fast. So this can be a really useful tool for setting your minimum and maximum levels, maybe deciding what you maybe need to order less of next time, or certainly order more of next time. There's a really interesting article in the knowledge base that goes over exactly how the stock turn numbers are calculated, but it's basically a higher number means that you're bringing stock in and then selling it or using it very quickly. Now the stock value report is the report that can show you the current value of your stock using whichever accounting method you have set up in your preferences. So by default, Kitomba will use first in, first out accounting, but obviously you can change that to maybe being set to whatever value you have in the cards tab instead. This report can be run as at any date, so you can run it, say, as at today's date if you want to find out your stock value now, but you could also run it, say, as at the end of the last financial year if you're interested in that information instead. So it's very useful. You can drill down to particular product categories, or of course you could run it for all of your products if you're just keen to get an idea of what your stock is currently worth. So I believe that Donna's next session or next upskill that she's going to run is on stock manager or management, should I say. So if you're keen to get more info on that, I believe that will be coming up next week. So this report you're hopefully all familiar with. We often consider it the most important report to run in Kitomba. If you're not a reports person, say you don't have time or you aren't really super keen to go through heaps of them, this is the one that we would recommend running if you ran nothing else. So this gives you a pretty big picture of what's happening in your business. So we'll give you a summary of your business activity over the selected time period, and it will break it down in terms of appointment types, appointment status, customer gender, your rebooking numbers, your retention numbers, and also, of course, your total appointment numbers. If you're using Kitomba dollars, obviously you'd be able to see sort of your overall totals, and then you'd also be able to see your Kitomba dollar discounts as well, separate from that. So this gives you a true idea of your business income. So it's important to note, obviously, that this would mostly look at sales, not necessarily payments. They don't always need to line up. As I mentioned before on the cash draw reporting, you can sell an item today but potentially pay for it next week or have it paid for last week. But this is a really good report to run just to get an idea of how your business is performing. So I believe Donna even has a webinar that covers the business summary in more detail. So if you are more interested, you really want to drill down, double check the knowledge base. Otherwise, feel free to let me know and I'm happy to send you a link to that one as well. So when looking at the business summary, it is important to take time and analyze the numbers each week so that you can understand the drivers that come from the business summary. So if you run this for a longer period of time, you'll get a big picture view of the business. But if you look at, say, the weekly figures, they're not as big as we have only run this for, say, the number of clients or number of rebookings over the date range. But if we multiply it over a date or a year, we'll get a really good picture of what's really happening. So it's good to run the business summary for various periods of time, compare with maybe what happened last year or earlier on in this year, just obviously whatever period is really appealing to you or you're interested in. You'll be able to see any growth or potentially where you need to concentrate on, say if there's less growth or even negative growth or stagnation there. So this should give you a clear picture of what your team needs to focus on. So for example, you could look at your rebook rates or your new client rates. You can obviously look at upping the amount of completed appointments versus no-show appointments, all sorts of things like that. So it will hopefully give you quite a good idea of where your business's strengths and weaknesses are and help you work to improve on it from there. One of the key reports that you'd hopefully be running reasonably often is our wages summary report. Now, what this report does for us is it calculates our commissions and obviously our wages based on any hourly rates that you have set up in the admin tab for each staff member. So one of the key things to note is that this report is based on the information in the appointment book. So having your appointment book being accurate is really, really important. So obviously you can set your commissions up in the preferences, or sorry, the admin tab of Kitomba under commissions, apply certain rules based on obviously how you want to pay staff, whether it be based on total turnover, based on a certain number of product or unit sales, whether it based on sales of a certain type, whether it be services, products, vouchers, concessions, things like that. And that will all be calculated here, which is awesome. You don't need to use a calculator. Now, I'd recommend that if you ever have staff needing to make changes to their hours, that you do so with, say, manual overrides, or make sure you show it in the appointment book. So if they go home early because they have no other reason, no appointments, or if they have another reason, it is important that you capture it in the appointment book, so that could then be reflected on this report, so that the hours that you're confirming will actually match up with what happened in real life and when the staff member was actually in the salon. as you can see from our example that we've provided, we've got our ordinary hours here, and we've got any overtime hours in a separate column. So overtime is also set in the admin tab under your business details. That's particularly useful for our businesses in Australia that pay, say, time and a half or double time. But of course, any time when you're applying time and a half, or overtime, should I say, that would also be calculated on this report. So the wages summary report will generally show you your staff member name, the commission group that they're in right now, and then it will give you sort of a breakdown and calculation of their hourly wages multiplied by the number of hours they worked, as well as any commissions that they earned. So if you are quite confident that obviously your appointment book matches and quite confident that your commission plan is sound and what you need, you can obviously just take this information and hopefully use it to pay your staff from here. This report's quite useful as well. If you use certain sort of pay packages or payroll, say like iPayroll or Ace Payroll, you can hopefully actually export this report directly into a spreadsheet that can then be imported into those other payroll systems. I'd recommend having a look in, say, the admin tab under preferences and then wages if you are keen to set that up. Now, the other report that can help you out is the leave and custom time report, which would show you when your staff are on leave or staff leave that has been entered into the calendar or into the leave section in the admin tab. I also am a fan of the timetables report. It will generally give you your staff hours that they've worked over say a week period, including obviously the time per day that they've worked. So if you sometimes have a bit of a discrepancy between what you believe happened and what the wages and commissions report is showing, you can maybe double check that with, say, the leave and custom time report or the timetables report to find out precisely where all those numbers are coming from and hopefully identify any days that maybe need to be amended. Now, I've got a list of other useful reports, so these might not be ones that you want to run start or end of day or at any particular frequency, but these are just generally useful to be aware of. So the marketing list report, this basically will show you messages that have been created by the marketing feature. So if you're ever creating a marketing campaign and you say hit show messages, this is the report that gets run, and it will demonstrate or display for you all of the messages that were created through that campaign, who they're going out to, what the content of the message was, and the scheduled time for it to send. So this can be useful if you're keen to maybe drill down on, say, an everyday marketing campaign that doesn't send out all your messages at once, but you may be keen to double check and find out, say, who's got your referral messages, who's got your new client thank you messages, or who's got your say non-retained messages. So if they maybe forgot to rebook or haven't been back in, you can keep an eye on the customers who you're marketing to and just get an idea of how many messages you're sending out, and obviously maybe get a better idea of who's going to be coming back and what the content or context of that might be. The message statistics report, this just gives you a summary of your messages that have gone out over a certain time frame. So this can be useful if you want to find out maybe how many emails or texts you sent over a date range. That will generally reconcile with, say, your Kitomba invoice that you get at the start or end of the month. And it's a good idea of tracking maybe what your message numbers are like in various times of the year. So maybe December the numbers go up, January numbers go down, etc., etc. So it's a good way of keeping track of your sort of summary or your numbers there. The staff timetables report I briefly mentioned before. It's helpful because it will give you a staff sort of working hours over whatever date range you're interested in, broken down, say, Sunday through to Monday, or throughout the whole week, should I say, and it will give you, if you choose, their working hours and their sort of lunch breaks, etc. So this is really useful to establish that what we have in Kitomba matches what happens in real life, and therefore obviously that our wages summary, etc. are all correct as well. Staff utilization, this is an awesome report. And I really recommend having a look at it at some stage just to get an idea of, say, how your staff members' time is spent. So what this does is it breaks down your staff time, obviously that we have on the calendar, and then puts it into categories. So there'll be their client time, which will be when they're actually seeing one-on-one with a client or booked in for an appointment. There'll be, say, their meeting time, which will be both their paid and unpaid time, and then there'll be their downtime. And the downtime could be, say, like an empty block on the calendar. And obviously, if you've got too much downtime, if your utilization is too low, that could mean that you maybe need to be proactive and get more appointments in the time slot. Or if it's like an admin person who tends to have no customer appointments but is always working, you might want to actually budget out that admin person's time using, say, custom time on the timetables, or potentially booking them out with, say, tasks and meetings, just so you get a really good idea of how busy your staff are, how much sort of free time they have by a percentage. I know this is one of the things for the business awards that we look at, so we just want to make sure that staff are being well utilized. Now, I've sort of glossed over the petty cash report. This report is, again, quite useful to run for, say, troubleshooting, but it could also be useful to run at the end of a week or a date range when you're keen to find out maybe what you're pulling petty cash out of the till for. So this will be the same sort of information that you get in the cards tab under petty cash, but obviously it just gives it to you nice in a printable or PDFable report format. So you can keep an eye on sort of your business expenses, specifically tied to taking petty cash out of the till or returning petty cash into the till if that's the case. Moving on to Kitomba One, for those of you that use Kitomba One, we've provided you with these key reports to hopefully help you out a bit. So the reports here in Kitomba One give you the confidence, hopefully, to make your good business decisions quickly, track your activity, and see trends right down to your individual team members, and potentially even give access to someone like an accountant or a business coach, just for that extra insight or sort of visibility from their point of view. You are, if you're unaware, able to give a direct login to someone like an accountant or a business coach, and you'd be able to give them access to, say, reporting only. So they wouldn't be able to see things like your, say, client list or anything like that, but they'd have a really good idea of, say, what your report numbers are like and future value of your bookings and things like that. So they can give you that really effective cash flow management. It's hopefully really easy to set up if you need a hand from there. Just to briefly gloss over what we have in K1 here, one of the really good ones that I'd recommend running if you use online booking prepayments is the online booking payments received report. So generally with online booking payments, in Kitomba, when you run your reconciliation, it will only give you the prepayments, or sorry, on the takings report on the day that the payment is used, which may not correlate with the date that the customer actually gave you the payment. So this report's really useful because you can actually marry it up with your PayPal account, you can marry it up with your bank account, and just make sure that obviously you know how many prepayments are outstanding, you know what has been redeemed on what day, and what has been obviously paid on which day. So this one's really useful if you're a multi-site business or an enterprise. A lot of these reports will be useful as they would be able to be run across more than one site at once. But obviously the bread and butter is the business summary in K1, which is really useful in that it's quite customizable. You can add or remove columns or KPIs that you're interested in, so particular service sales or categories that you're interested in, similar to your local Kitomba business summary. You can add those. You can look specifically at various sales or client KPIs as well. This has also got a neat functionality where you can run it by day or you can run it by week. So you could say show number of sales for a staff person or a particular business unit over a week or day date range. So I definitely recommend running this report if you are doing so already. It potentially has a little bit more customizability than, say, the local Kitomba business summary, which can be very helpful in a lot of scenarios. Now, I believe that's it for the plan session. But of course, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, feel free to use that questions panel on your dashboard. If you do have any questions that may be a bit more lengthy, you can certainly email after the webinar, or of course contact us on the help desk number. I'll obviously leave the session going for a few minutes in case any questions come through, but otherwise, yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Okay, so it looks like we had a question come through just around the star clients. So the question was, is there a how-to on how to set up star clients in the admin tab? I believe there is, just in our knowledge base. If you'd like, I can send you a link to that after the end of the session. Otherwise, if anyone else is keen on star clients, definitely let me know, and I'm happy to set it up from there. If you do have any further questions outside of obviously the user guide that I'm going to send you, just communicate with me from there, or obviously give the help desk a call. I can certainly send that through to you. Okay, I think that's probably us for the day. Once again, thank you very much for coming. Hopefully I didn't do too bad for my first webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.